Coming to you live from a traffic jam on the M2 motorway, it's this week's Apocalypse. I am your co-host, Kevin Lenihan. With me, as always, is John Paris. John, how are you doing today?
Move! For the love of God.
It's endless, almost like it's going on forever, isn't it? This traffic jam almost makes us feel like we're perhaps immortal, but we're not. But immortality is part of the problem here. So what has happened is a certain portion of the human race have realized that they are immortals, and their sort of concern for their own and other public safety has just gone out the window, and now there's just car crashes and fights, and they're out there experimentally stabbing each other and generally getting in the way. And I have an appointment to get to, and this is extremely frustrating. And they won't move, and they've blocked the road, so I'm just furious. Yeah. I'm just furious, John. I'm furious.
I mean, like, it poses a massive problem. I mean, how do you get rid of someone who is essentially unkillable?
Exactly. You know, they're going to go on forever. They don't care.
Yeah.
You know, they feel like they're outside of, I guess, the human race now, like they're better than us or something. I don't know. I mean, they don't look it. I mean, they seem like a bunch of Egypts to me. Yeah. I mean, they're just arsing about right now and causing trouble. But as I say, we're working on sort of a time constraint here.
Yeah.
We need to sort these people out. Is what we need to do.
Yeah.
And it's getting silly. So I have just lined up some films here on my phone, if you want to gather round and have a wee look at my weirdly proportioned film, my weirdly proportioned phone.
Wait, we're going to watch movies on your phone.
We're going to watch movies on my phone. It's the way they were intended
David Lynch
to be watched.
Is not going to like this.
He's gonna send me hate mail. But you know what? We're stuck in it. What are we going to do? We can't go back and we can't go forward.
No.
And I don't know, but I'm not getting out of this car, because they might mistake me for an immortal and be like, ha ha ha, let's have fun and stab me, and then that's me.
Yeah.
So, let's stay in here with the doors locked.
Ooh.
So I have queued up here for us to maybe help us out with these Egypts.
Mm-hmm.
We have some films about immortals. So we have Alejandro Jodorowsky's The Holy Mountain from 1973.
Talk about things getting silly.
I know. Oh my. Then we have Russell Mulcahy's Highlander from 1986.
Talk about things getting silly.
And then we have Richard Schenkman's Jerome Bixby's The Man from Earth.
That's another of these Francis Ford Coppola Bram Stokers.
Yes, or John Carpenter's Vampires from 2007.
Ooh.
So let's just sit down here, gather around the warming glow of my telephone and watch these films that were definitely intended to be seen this way. All right, so John, what an experience. Let's just try to ignore the chaos outside, and I would like to know,
on the chaos that was just
focus on the chaos right here. What did you think of Alejandro Jodorowsky's The Holy Mountain?
I love The Holy Mountain. It's such a unique experience that it's kind of, it's hard to even kind of pinpoint to what you've just witnessed after you see it. Like it kind of almost demands multiple viewings. I have seen this movie multiple times, but I think the first couple of times I was somewhat inebriated, so I maybe wasn't as focused as I should have been.
Yeah, I mean, I can only say that I have an identical experience to you.
Yeah.
I've seen this film. I think I saw this film maybe twice before.
Yeah.
And both times I was, to use the parlance of our times and our people, snattered.
Yeah. There might be a strange link there with
I think there's a connection.
Certain individual that we both know.
So I remember being extremely blocked and watching this a long time ago and finding it fascinating, but also being, kind of not in the best, most receptive state to understand exactly what I was seeing. Also with another one of this guy's films, El Topo, which is a strange one as well, which is also very, very good, I think, in my recollection. But yes, I think this is the first time I think probably the both of us have seen this film sober. Yes, yeah.
It makes very little difference as well. Kind of makes you feel like you're on something. But
I remember more about it this time than I did from previous times.
I mean, there's so much going on in this movie, and it manages to like it's very arty, it's very surreal, and he tackles movies. He makes them in such a way that it is very surreal, and you're watching a movie, and like he leans more into that. He doesn't try to make things seem realistic or like that they're happening, but he's such a wonderful vision, and there's so much satire and so much in this movie that, and so much humor as well, which I think helps. That a lot of the times these kind of more arty films, you kind of watch them and they take themselves way too seriously, to the point that it's just like just get over yourself. But
like this film in particular, I think if you were to describe it to someone, they might think that it's a film like that. Yeah. But then you see it and you're like, oh, this is gorgeous. Yeah. And also really strange but intense. It's like it's weirdly meta. As you say, like it knows that it's a film.
I thought actually, just when you say it's weirdly meta, I'd want to kind of put like a spoiler warning, because at some point I do want to talk about the ending of this movie and certain parts of it. And to be honest, if anyone hasn't seen this movie, it won't really make much of a difference, to be honest.
Probably not.
This is one of those movies. It is about the journey, and each scene's so different, and they're very quick. To know that it's almost you can't call this movie boring.
No.
One thing you can't say, you might not like it. This definitely isn't for everyone, but you cannot call this movie boring.
No, like there's always something odd happening. Yeah. That makes you go like sort of sit up and say, "Whoa, what's that?" Or "How did they do that?" There's a bunch of points in this movie where I was looking at it being like, "How did they do that? Yeah. How did they get that shot to look like that?" Because it's sometimes like the way he uses perspective, and color in combination is so mind-boggling at times, where I'm just like, you think you know what you're looking at, and then something will move somewhere, and you're like, wait, what? No. There's a particular scene, in fact, where it's sort of a viewed from above, and a sort of a rainbow sort of eye shape looking down. And it looks like it's just concentric, sort of like, it just looks like it's, the shape being repeated over and over again, going out and out and out and out and out. Yeah. But then you see a door open in one of the rings, and you realize that you're looking at it from directly above. Yeah. And then it's just baffling. You're like, wait a minute, where's the wall start that door is in? And then people start walking out of it, and even then you're like looking for shadows, and it's so well lit that there are no shadows. And you're like, so you can't tell. And then you just like, your brain's just like my brain was just doing little loops of like, wait a minute, what angle am I looking at this from? Yeah, that's so bizarre, and it just pickled my noodle for a few minutes. Like it's weirdly enough, even though there's a lot of great imagery in this movie, that's the particular point that stuck with me. Yeah, where I was just like, how did he do that? How did he do that? That's so clever.
It's not. It's almost not even how. There's also just like there's such a clear vision in it, and just what you're saying there, where the use of colors and these sets look amazing. And this is 1973. Well, this is when it was released, so this is the early 70s. This was made, and this looks more striking and better than a lot of movies nowadays. Yeah, with all this technology and CGI and all this. You can do whatever you can imagine now, but yet we just get superhero movies essentially.
You end up with Transformers and the Justice League movie. Yeah, but
it's so striking, and it's so just what you're saying basically. Every scene stands out for different reasons. Yeah. And it's it's that whole thing of every shot should look like a painting. this really does. This could be a still. You could have this almost every scene in this. You could have a poster of it on your wall or on a T-shirt. Like, they all look great.
Yeah, and it's just it sets an expectation and then surprises you with it. Like, suddenly there's a scene where there are protesters and everything sort of seems to be like kicking off, and that sort of sends into violence. But then the violence is sort of softened and made strange by, I mean, there's blood in this movie, but the only blood in this movie that looks like actual blood is a point where the blood is fake.
Yeah.
And it's in the scene it's supposed to be fake, where it's like a play being sort of played out with frogs and lizards.
Yeah.
And then they have this sort of like I think it's the Mayans that it's supposed to be like the slaughter of the Mayans by the Spanish. And they have this, that is really fun. They made all these little costumes for frogs, which baffled me. Like that's a tailoring job right there. So there's blood spraying in that scene. You're like, oh, and then you realize, oh no, this is like a weird thing that's being put on for people. So this is a play in the context of the thing.
Yeah.
And then when people are actually being shot and stuff, like the blood is like yellow and green and blue, and at one point it's birds.
Yeah.
That was maybe the most strikingly beautiful thing I think that happened in the film was when someone was shot and they're lying on the ground, and out of their wound just these little birds were coming out and flying away, and I was like, that's amazing.
Yeah.
That's so striking.
Even the imagery and the stuff that you maybe, because I would challenge anyone to completely get every shot and every reference in this from the first watching, because it's so dense, and it's some of it even seems that you'll never get it. It's just coming straight from Jodorowsky's own personal experiences, or I mean, I don't know if it's true, but apparently they might have, before they shot it, they took like a week, him and the cast, and were on hallucinogenics, so a lot of it probably came from that as well, you know,
maybe
or certain things, I would imagine. But it still doesn't manage to be or to feel pretentious. I'm sure a lot of people would disagree with me, but to me it doesn't seem pretentious, especially there'll be times where like I love when it starts bringing in these tarot card characters, and each one has a planet that they live on, and it goes through it, and to me that's the most enjoyable part, is like seeing all these new characters and like what kind of satirical bend he's going for with each one, or what you know, all of them are representing something. And like there's a really good one, I can't remember each one individually by name, but there's a really good one where like I think it's Jupiter actually, where he's creating art, and it's just these painted arse cheeks like landing on pages, and it's
on like a production line with all these people with just paint on their bums sitting down and standing up,
and it's just like that's kind of what's happening these days. It's just it's more about producing large quantities than it is producing quality, and like that one was very good, and there's so many of them, each one has something to say, and on something strange that they're up to as well. Because like there's a guy that's collecting testicles. That's mad.
And he's like dead pleased that he's managed to get to 1,000. And you're like, what?
Yeah.
Like I mean, I'm sure if you want to read into it, or you want to like watch it again and again and try and figure it out, you know, there's so much metaphor going on as well.
Yeah.
But sometimes it's just, this looks beautiful, look at it.
Yeah.
And maybe even in those scenes there's a metaphor going on, but you don't necessarily need to acknowledge that to
I almost think this is the kind of movie that I hope anyway, you know, we're kind of we've always been kind of the type of people to try and like dig more meaning out of things, and you know like maybe overanalyze stuff, and you know, which is a bit bit annoying sometimes, but I kind of hope and I think that this movie could be enjoyed just on a surface level because of how ridiculous. It's almost Monty Python-esque at times, you know.
It is, in fact, yes. That was something that really jumped out at me at a certain point where I realised that.
Yeah.
Where it hit me really hard was like some of the way the shots are set up reminded me of Terry Gilliam.
Yeah.
And some of the things people were saying and the way people were acting reminded me of Terry Jones specifically. Which made me really appreciate it, especially towards the end when they have they're going to the Holy Mountain to defeat the Immortals and blah blah blah, and it's all really well set up in a way that really holds your attention because it's so silly, and then also it's visually striking, and then you get to the point where they're going up the mountain and they come across a crazy guy and his bar that looks like just this nasty, crappy outbuilding with a bunch of signs plastered all over it, like the Pantheon Bar. Then they go in there, and then it's like my favorite scene happens where there's a guy.
The guy goes through the mountain.
I love him so much. He's my favorite thing in the film.
Yeah.
He's so just hype and enthusiastic and excited about the fact that he can pass through matter horizontally. Yeah. You know, he can't go up the mountain, but he can go through the mountain, and he's happy with that. And he's just like, check me out, check out how awesome I am, and running at walls and then disappearing and then reappearing like, I'm over here now. Yep. That was lovely. That whole scene I thought was great. Because it's like people trying to tempt them away, like, oh, look, you could just stay here and not scale the mountain. And it's kind of like, you know what, that might actually be all right. This place seems
just hang out with
fun.
that guy.
I just hang out with the guy that runs through walls. He's class.
Yeah, I would be surprised if the Monty Python crew weren't in some way inspired with this movie, especially as well. Like, I mean, Monty Python were already doing kind of, fourth wall breaking and things like that.
Oh yeah.
But like the end of this movie,
TV show,
I think is just perfect for what it is.
Yep.
It is just like the alchemist, the director, the one leading.
Spoiler warning if you don't want to know this, but it doesn't. I don't think it really hurts the film if you know that this is happening. But if you don't, you can skip forward. The timestamps are always in the description.
Because just to liken it with that Monty Python thing, the Monty Python, the Holy Grail, the end, that ending, it does very much the same thing, and it almost seems divorced from the rest of the movie in a sense. It's just like it doesn't matter.
It's something I've come to think of as the Blazing Saddles ending, to be honest. That's the one that always stuck with me because, to be honest, in Blazing Saddles, I always found it really disappointing that it ended that way. Because I really like Blazing Saddles. I think it's a great film right up until the ending when everything falls apart. And I guess spoilers for Blazing Saddles as well now. But they just sort of end up going off the side of the set and then rampaging through the actual studio and end up going on to other sets and on their horses dressed as cowboys, wrecking that and just being in like the canteen of the movie studio having a food fight, and then they end up back in the film again and you're like, what the hell just happened? This film has a similar thing like that where the director who is in the film and plays the alchemist literally turns to the camera and tells you this is a movie. He says this is a film, I think is what he says. And he just starts talking
camera
about that.
Zoom back, and then you see the crew and all this. It's like, that's brilliant.
Yeah, you see the boom mic guy standing there holding the boom mic, and then it keeps zooming out, and you see everybody else standing around in their coats with their hands in their pockets.
Let us return to reality. Let it and all this. Yeah, it's done very well, and it's the perfect ending for everything this movie is doing and everything that's went on before in the story. I really can't fault this movie. It's enjoyable. It's so enjoyable.
Because it's the kind of ending that I always find, again, even in the Monty Python's Holy Grail, I am actually always kind of, the first time I saw it, I remember just staring, which is definitely what they intended. Definitely what the Pythons intended when they made the ending like that. I remember staring at it and going, what? And then the credits started rolling and I was like, what?
And for that, there was a whole thing where they ran out of money. That wasn't actually going to be the ending, I don't think. But they like that production was plagued with like they couldn't get enough money. That's why they didn't have horses and like all this stuff that kind of added to the movie where they end up with the coconuts and stuff like that. That's such a brilliant joke that is brought about by necessity more than anything else.
like, we can't afford horses and horse trainers and all this other rot.
Yeah.
So let's just have a little man that follows people around and with a pair of coconuts making horse sounds,
And that's
which is wonderful.
just like kind of just to bring it back to the Holy Mountain.
Yeah.
Just talking about budget, it's a bit reductive, I know, but this movie was made on a very tight budget as well. They probably were able to stretch it a bit more because they were in Mexico and not the States. But it amazes me just how much he does and how many scenes there are in this movie, and just how, again, just the word dense springs to mind, how dense this movie is. And it just doesn't seem like he's made any concessions at all. Like he's had his vision realized, and he just did what he had to do. But it's just crazy to think that this is a low budget movie, because what you said earlier, where every scene looks astounding. And
it's handcrafted. It's the same way that, and I hate to be bringing this back to other Monty Python people, but I don't.
Well,
actually,
we've done it, and we're going to do it now.
Yeah, but I can't help thinking of Terry Gilliam the whole time I was watching this film. Terry Gilliam kept jumping into my head, and it was
I have a
just
weird
like,
image now.
Yeah, okay, not literally, but yes. But Terry Gilliam's films very often look like they have been built from the ground up.
Yeah.
They have been like there's things that are shot on location and stuff like that, but everything is so crafted that it feels like another world has been built. And this film has that same thing going on. It's like, you look at this and you're like, that's a set they definitely built, because that doesn't exist anywhere in the world. And thinking about that on like a tiny budget and having to do that it's really impressive that they're able to make so much of that stuff and do all the things that they did on a smaller budget, because this film has so many scenes where you're like, you had to build this whole massive room to make this one shot work. Yeah. That is this huge amount of effort for like one shot to just look great. And then maybe even build a completely different set whenever the camera is down with the people, because that probably wouldn't work in the set that you're viewing from above that you built for this crazy perspective. And then you're down next to people. You can't tell that it's like, it doesn't look like it's probably a completely different set that they had to build somewhere else, maybe. Yeah. And it's like, that's mind-boggling, and it is just this huge amount of effort for the fine details, like you were talking about. We've brought this up before. Again, you were talking about the hamster factor thing in about the 12 Monkeys thing, that Terry Gilliam was just like, no, the hamster has to be running in the background, so we need to shoot this again and again and again until we get that exactly right. It feels like it's that. Yeah.
I think it's just a testament dedication to a talented artist, just having this vision, having a very clear vision of what they want and what they're trying to say, and just being given enough to do it. Like, even, I'm sure concessions had to be made to make things work, but I think it is a good kind of comparison to compare Jodorowsky to the why did my mind just blank there? To Gilliam.
What, Terry Gilliam?
Yeah. Don't know why that happened. Literally just said his name like 2 seconds ago. But yeah, it's a really good comparison to compare the two directors, because they're very similar in that way. I mean, Jodorowsky's definitely a bit more off the wall, so to speak, to use air quotes, which no one listening can see. But
that's what you have to say. It.
But like they both definitely are very, very unique directors in that sense. They both really bring this like unique vision to cinema, and I think The Holy Mountain's wonderful. And I've seen El Topo, and I remember loving that one, and I actually need to watch more of his stuff. Actually, I'm kind of a bit appalled that I haven't really.
I have missed all of his post-millennium things that he's done. I haven't seen anything that he's done like after like the early 90s, and there's like 3 or 4 films that he's made since then that I was surprised to learn about. I just assumed that he had stopped. He made films in the 70s and maybe the 80s, and then that was it. But no, that's not so. He's still making things, so it definitely a time to go back and enjoy that. But speaking of this film is beautiful. It is as deep as you want it to be. I think when you're watching it, you can read into it as much as you like. Yeah, and again, like a lot of other directors we've talked about here, you can enjoy it on a completely superficial level and just be like, this is a series of beautiful scenes.
And hilarious scenes sometimes.
And funny too, yeah. It can be very funny and very odd and strange, and you can just be like, haha, this is ridiculous. And then you can also sit and have a wee think about it and be like, oh, that's actually really thoughtful and blah, 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 blah. You know, and as I say, like, we've both seen this film hammered several times and still appreciated it then. So, you know, I think that's a testament to the craft of the filmmaker. All right, well, they're still out there just sort of wandering around and creating trouble. There's a couple of cars on fire now, and they're just sort of standing around and toasting marshmallows on the fire. I don't think these people are... they're just frustrating. You know,
how come turning into an immortal makes you an asshole?
I don't know. It seems to, though, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It just kind of seems to make you kind of a jerk. We haven't really tested the theory yet. I don't know if we've become immortal or not, but I don't really want to have a go to find out, just in case we're wrong. So I think we just need to nip this problem in the bud now. So that being the case, then we got to figure out what we learned from the movie. Sorry, the Russell Mulcahy. Keep wanting to say Mulcahy for some reason. Mulcahy. Russell Mulcahy's Highlander from 1986. John, what did you think of Highlander?
There's so many reasons I should not like Highlander, but I absolutely love Highlander.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's like a nostalgia thing or what, you know, but I seen this movie at a young age, probably younger than I should have been, because I think it was a 15 rating, is it?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, I love this movie. It's so stupid and so daft, and so much of it doesn't make sense. But it's good. It's got this like perfect balance of like cheesy and everything just like not properly working just enough that it makes this magical weird movie.
It just about comes together.
Yeah,
that's the
it
thing.
It almost feels like if one tiny wee element was off, it'd just be like, no, this is trash.
Yeah, it's like a shopping trolley, you know. It's like it's always threatening to veer wildly off course, but it never quite does.
Yeah,
you're able to just sort of hold on to it and make it go the way you want it to go, I guess. Because I also really, really, really like this film. There are problems with it, but I think the thing about it is that charisma and charm can go a long way.
Definitely.
And when it comes to this, like, the script for this film isn't necessarily amazing, no. But the way that it is delivered by the actors who are in it makes it work. Like Christopher Lambert is, and they make several jokes about this. They make at least one joke, in fact, in the movie is like he's a man with a very strong accent, and he never really does. And in this, there's a point towards whenever we have our sort of flashbacks to the old days in Scotland. He's sort of doing a bit of a Scottish accent.
Yes, sort of,
and with the emphasis on sort of. Because he has a very strong accent, and we've talked about this before on the show. That technically, I think he's American, but he was raised and grew up in Europe and stuff, and in lots of different countries and stuff. Like mainly
he's from lots of different places.
He's from, in fact, yes, that is the joke where one of the cops is like, "Where the hell are you from, Where the hell are you from, Nash?" Because he's going by the name Nash. And he just looks and goes, "Lots of different places." And you're like, "Yep, yep. Thank you for acknowledging."
I don't know if his
accent is wild.
I don't know if this is true, but apparently he didn't speak a word of English at this point when he was hired. I don't know how he got hired for this movie.
That doesn't seem likely to me.
Yeah, it was the only. I think the movie he was in just before it was that Tarzan one. What do you call that one? Greystoke or something.
Greystoke,
like that.
Yeah.
So well, that was the first English speaking role that he had, and he's only saying wee bits and pieces because he's just learning English in that movie, in the fiction of that movie. But yeah, apparently he got this role, and then they were like shocked to find out this guy doesn't speak English. What do we do?
Yeah.
But I don't know if it's true or not. I don't know if it's one of those like funny.
It doesn't seem likely because of like who his parents were and
Yeah.
how he was raised. It doesn't seem likely to me that he wouldn't speak any English
Yeah,
at all.
and you would have to
maybe.
You would have to rush to like get him coached into like getting the phonetics right and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But
So I mean, he's got a strong accent, and maybe his English wasn't spot on perfect, maybe, but I can't imagine he didn't speak any English at all. That doesn't seem plausible to me. But he does all right. I mean, he speaks like someone who knows the language well. It's just that his accent is just extremely
and that really works for the I'm going to say present day, but it's like 1980s. That's for the present day stuff that is shot. It works really well because then you get that sense. Yeah, he is, but it completely breaks it when they have the flashback scenes in Scotland, and you're like, wow.
Yeah, whenever he's got his friend Dougal, every time he says his mate Dougal's name, he's like Dougal, and you're like, oh man, that's rough. And I think one of the other problems is that he's surrounded by Scottish actors there, people who are Scottish. There's like two guys here with him. One of them was actually in in Braveheart. One of the guys is in Braveheart.
James Cosmo is the actor. He plays Angus, who's like the only one who's kind of nice to him once he comes out as immortal.
Yeah,
but
once he is forced out as exposed, let's say, as an immortal, it's not really his choice.
The one I find hilarious of him pronouncing is he there.
He there.
His wife Heather. He always says hey there.
Oh, he can't say Heather, of course. Yeah.
Hey there.
Yeah. So yeah, and then it gets worse then later when he is out living with his new wife. Yes, who is Heather.
There.
Yeah, and then yes, he's out living with Heather, and then we get our introduction of our sort of mentor character who shows up, played by Sean Connery, a real Scottish man who is playing an Egyptian by way of Spain. So he's known as a Spaniard.
Yep.
But he's Egyptian originally, but he just talks with an extremely strong, his just real Scottish accent that he has, like he does in every movie ever, where he's never bothered doing an accent.
I think for a while he tried, and then he realized, I can't do this, and he just, I'm going to get the work anyway, fuck it.
Yeah, people want Sean Connery in their movie, so they'll hire me.
Yeah,
so
like people, if you get Sean Connery in your movie, you want him to speak like Sean Connery.
Yeah, that's the reason you hire him. You hire him to be Sean Connery, so there he is.
But
so
apparently he was meant to play Connor McLeod initially. Again, this is all hearsay, so this could be complete bullshit. But he preferred the Ramirez role, so he like kind of requested to be Ramirez, even though Ramirez is, as you say, an Egyptian Spaniard.
Yes, an Egyptian man who's been living in Spain for a long time, so he should have at least something of a Spanish accent, you would imagine.
That's not how accents work. All. Everyone knows you mix Egyptian with Spanish, you get Scottish.
And you mix Scottish with itself and you get Christopher Lambert somehow.
That's just like the NA is written in.
Yeah.
Non-applicable. Yep, we don't know.
Yep. So I like this film. It's not that it's like it's competently made and everything, and it's grand. Some of the effects actually are,
for the most part. I mean, the actual kind of fight choreography is kind of
terrible.
It's really rough. Like
I think they're awful.
It cuts to like things really weirdly happen. Like that character wasn't standing there, and there's a lot of instances where people just appear to the side of the camera, like off screen, right beside characters. Like that happens 3 or 4 times, and again, it's kind of pointless even really critiquing it for this, because it's kind of bit of fun and it is just silly.
It is, because like whenever people are swinging swords, it always looks clumsy. And I think I kind of like the fact that the combat in it is very heavy. It's very heavy and slow. If they made this today, they'd be jumping about all over the place and doing flips. Now there is a bit where a guy does flips and it's silly and pointless, and I don't know why he does it, but I guess they had a guy who could do flips, so they just had him do flips. But
he does a hell of a lot of flips.
He does a lot of flips for very little reason. He's wasting his energy. But anyway, so all the combat's very heavy and slow and clumsy, and generally involves people, much like when we were watching the Masters of the Universe movie. Sometimes it's someone just standing there holding their sword out while another person hits it.
Yep.
And then the other person then stands and waits with their sword, and then that other person then hits their sword for a while. It's mostly that.
Yeah. A bit more energy than Masters of the Universe.
A lot more energy than Masters of the Universe, but that wouldn't be hard.
It would put you in mind of the original Star Wars, the way their lightsaber fights were very slow and
in the first one especially,
and then in the new ones, as you're saying, like I think Highlander is getting remade now. I think with what do you call him? Superman, Henry Cavill.
Right,
I think he's playing the lead. I don't know if it's going to be a complete redo, or if it's going to be like, is Connor McLeod still floating about somewhere? And that would be nice.
Who knows?
Yeah, that'd be nice to get Christopher Lambert in, just like go, we cameo.
He's so old. Like, yes, I haven't aged. Look at me. Yeah, right. So it's that stuff's kind of bad, but it shares a bit more with Masters of the Universe, I think, but is, I think, on average a better film.
Oh, definitely.
Because Masters of the Universe, the problem was that all the stuff with the good guys was so dull and boring, whereas this is a bit more evenly spread. Because our good guy is Connor McLeod of the Clan McLeod, played by Christopher Lambert, who is fun to watch, and this is where he's at his most smirky and doing his laugh a lot, and just generally like inhabiting making the character his own in a way, which is fun. And then you've got the antagonist played by Clancy Brown, who is a guy that I have a lot of time for, and I think he is great.
Yeah,
he's extremely versatile, but he's especially good when he's playing villains. Now, he was in another film we did a wee while ago that was awful. That was a Pathfinder he was in which he played a big angry Viking. And you can tell that the reason they hired Clancy Brown was because Highlander. Because people know him as the Kurgan in Highlander, and he's the bad guy in this. He's great. Whenever he's on screen, he owns the scene. Yeah. He's huge and he's intimidating, and he's a voice actor mainly now, and his voice is very versatile. And in this film, he's going with the most gravelly performance you will probably ever see anyone give, which is sort of works with the story as well, because he gets his sort of throat cut at one point.
Yeah.
And he has this big scar, and he has his sort of his neck held together at one point with safety pins, which is fun. But like that sort of is like, initially he has a deep gravelly voice, and then after that he goes more gravelly once he's got the front of his neck sliced open. Yeah. And that's just a fun wee detail on the part of the actor that I love. That he's now even more gravelly than he was before, even though he's an extremely gravelly man. And he is stomping around, especially when he's in the modern day. He's just a dick to everybody. And like, it's not even like he's not like going around murdering everybody or anything like that. He does kill people, but he only really kills the other immortals. But he's just like stomping around the place and being a jerk. And like, there's a point where he's in a church and he's just being horrible to nuns because he thinks it's funny.
Yeah. And
like, he's sort of childish in a way. And like, I don't know, I just really like him as a villain. Because he's like...
Apparently in that church scene, the actual actor, Clancy Brown himself, felt really bad for saying these things. I don't know if it was real nuns or who it was, but he apologised to the extras in that scene for what he was saying and stuff like that.
There's another reason to like Clancy Brown. There you go.
I would imagine that's true. He did, and a few like we kind of like documentaries and things like that where I've seen him. He seems like a pretty cool, down to earth guy.
Yeah, he's in a really good. There's a documentary called "I Know That Voice."
Yeah,
that John DiMaggio made, who people would know as Bender from Futurama, but he's in so many things. He's in a lot of video games.
Yeah,
he does a lot of it. He's like Marcus Phoenix in the Gears of War series, but he's in tons of other stuff. He made a documentary about voice actors. And Clancy Brown features a little bit in that, and he just seems so nice.
Yeah.
He's been in other things. He was in that. I mentioned this before because apparently I can't stop bringing up Clancy Brown on our podcast. But he was in that Promising Young Woman movie as well, in which he played the father of the protagonist, and he was great in that. He was great in that as just Uber dad, of being like the kind of like supporting, helpful father that you just want to hug from, you know. He was great in that. So he's very versatile, and he's done so many voices.
Yeah,
like you look at his credits, and he is just, I mean, he's Mr. Krabs in SpongeBob SquarePants.
I was waiting for that.
Is wild.
That was the important one had to come up.
Possibly his most iconic role next to the Kurgan is Mr. Krabs.
But no, yeah, he's a very good villain in this.
Yeah,
and yeah, like for the most part, like the actors work for different reasons in their roles. You know, they may not kind of suit them on paper, but it's a weird movie. It just, everything kind of works, and it's like held together by duct tape.
Yeah, and apparently loosely inspired by the legend of the Comte de Saint-Germain.
Yeah.
Who has booze named after him these days, but there was like a French count who people were convinced was a time traveler.
Yeah.
Like looking back at all of the written records about him, you know, it's this weird sort of thing where it's like he behaved like someone who had a lot more knowledge of the past than someone should, who was his age. And he seemed like, the way people described him, no one could ever really figure out whether he was very, very young or quite old.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I guess maybe it was just the look of his face or something, but I think he's a guy who leaned into it. He would lie to people about what age he was to different people, so people all thought he was different ages and stuff. And I think that sort of inspired the original writing of this film, which is why you have a lot of scenes where it's going back in time to like the sort of the time of Louis the Louis the 13th, I think, really around that time. And there's that great scene where he's having the duel. I think it's in London, I think.
Oh yes, yeah.
He just the guy keeps shooting him, and he keeps getting up because he's hammered, and he's just like, "Oh, I guess you missed me," and he's shooting him over and over and over and over and over again, and it's really funny, and that's mainly thanks to like Christopher Lambert being funny.
Yeah.
In that scene, his performance there is very, very, very funny, and everyone's quite good in this, even like, you know, even though like the script's not amazing or anything, but it's good. It's good enough to hold the whole thing together.
It's like, it's a great original idea that
it is.
You know, they don't delve into like there's sequels to this movie which just do not go near. Especially the second one is completely like it completely changes the fiction. But what I love about this first one is that it doesn't really explain anything. You don't really. There's no explanation for why Ramirez goes and helps him and explains what Highlanders are and all, or not, immortals are. Sorry, he's the Highlander, but the rest of them are just immortals or whatever. Yeah,
I people were doing that for years, and like they refer to like the immortals
as
Highlanders. And that's wrong. Like, they're all known by the places they come from, which is why they call him Highlander.
Yeah.
And Kurgan, like, he's from there's a people called the Kurgans, and that's why he's called Kurgan. And Ramirez is known sometimes as the Spaniard by people, even though he's not Spanish and he's Egyptian, which he seems a little bit annoyed about here and there, but he just goes with it.
Yeah.
So yeah, that seems to be the thing where like there's like an immortal for every like sort of region of the world almost, and they're sort of compelled by some unknown force that is never explained to come together at some point to fight and kill each other, and then someone will be the last one, and then they will have the knowledge, and then they will be like super special. It seems to me that Ramirez's motivation is that he's not so sure that he's going to be the one, and
it seems like
he wants to help someone that he approves of to be the one, rather than someone like the Kurgan, who would be awful if he got the power.
It seems like the rest of them, because there's also the I forget the name of the other guy that is friendly in the present time.
That guy, Castigaire.
Like, you know, he comes and they clearly have a friendship from hundreds of years ago. You know.
They play that really well, where it's like there's about to be a confrontation, and then they both laugh and hug each other,
and pull out a wee flask of whiskey, I'm assuming.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
like there's things like that which kind of hint that there's no real animosity between most of the immortals. Just the Kurgan
Right.
seems to be a bit of a dick, and probably a few others. But so then you're left with all these questions, but it doesn't really answer them, and I think it's better that way.
Yeah, it doesn't need to. It's nice that there's like this weird mystery about like you don't know why some people are just born to be immortal.
Yeah.
And then they get to like the age of like in their like 20s or late 20s or whatever. Even though Sean Connery actually is definitely looks old. Like,
there's somewhere, because I was wondering about this, and I don't know if it's in one of the sequels, or it's just someone's made up, or maybe there was a TV series as well. But apparently, your first death is the age that you stay at, which is kind of crap if you don't find out you're immortal until you're like 80.
90. If you die of old age and then immediately come back and you're like, oh, my hip.
Bollocks. Well, I'm not gonna win the knowledge, am I?
No. So, yeah, well, that's a fun little wrinkle, but I mean, it's stuff that I don't feel like I need explained.
No.
But when you're at the point where you're making a TV show about a film that doesn't explain itself, you're kind of forced to like delve into backstory then. I think so. It makes sense that there's all these like wiki stuff about Highlander fiction, but I mean, you look at the sequel, like the sequels of this are nonsense. I mean, it feels like, I don't know if this is true or not, but it feels like the second film was probably an already existing script for something else, and then they just slapped the Highlander name on it and changed a couple of things.
That happens so much especially with these kind of lower budget movies, that has to be the case because it is widely different. It's about aliens.
And the third one, they try to like course correct by the time they get to the third one by basically like ignoring the second one again and trying to sort of almost remake the first one in a way with the third one. I remember the third one not being good, but I haven't seen it since I was a kid, so I couldn't really say for sure. But I still really like this one a lot because it's charming and it's funny, and sometimes the fight scenes are bad, but the performances of the main cast are good enough to the point where, you know, it all just works.
Yeah.
It all just comes together nicely, I think, in a way that makes it a fun film, and I think it can get by on that just fine. All right, well, traffic started moving for a wee minute there, but it turned out it was just because some of these immortals pitched their cars off the edge of a bridge and made a bit of a gap, and now they're all down there just rolling around in the shards. And the more I have to look at these guys, the more annoyed and fed up. I mean, why would you waste the gift of immortality in this silly, silly way? Yeah. It's so infuriating.
There's also a thing where I'm kind of laughing at some of them because there are fates worse than death, such as those that are trapped underwater for what'll probably be, you know, at least a few months now.
Yeah, exactly. So stuff them.
Yeah,
you know, while they try to fight. Maybe I feel like we should go down and help them, but I also feel like maybe they won't learn.
No,
if we don't do that. So instead of helping them, John, why don't you tell me what you thought of Richard Schenkman's Jerome Bixby's The Man from Earth from 2007.
I quite enjoy this movie. Again, it's very much, actually all three of these movies. I could understand someone not liking them or someone kind of hitting against them. This movie, the script, it's kind of the opposite of Highlander, where the script is very good. Like, the script's interesting and has these kind of philosophical things behind it. And the production is kind of terrible.
It has the feel of a made-for-TV movie about it. I think with the film stock and the way it's shot even is very much like a TV movie.
Yeah.
It almost reminded me of the film stock and quality of Dr. Quinn Medicine Woman. It's like, even like the color palette and everything in it seemed to be that when I was watching it.
Yeah.
But I think what you're saying is right. I think it's quite well written, but the production values maybe not so high.
And I mean, it's crazy that this movie was made in 2007.
Yeah, it looks
or
like something
released.
from the early
Yeah,
90s.
it's you know, you would think that it would look a bit better, and there's also like a few. I wouldn't say bad, like kind of questionable performances in it. You know, it's not across the board strong acting.
It's up and down,
which you kind of need for these kind of like single room, like almost like telly play almost.
Yeah, it's exactly what it is. I
Yeah.
would say it has the feel and structure and scene transition design, let's say, of a play.
Yeah.
The whole film takes place basically in between one room and the driveway immediately outside the room. And in fact, it was eventually turned into a play.
Yeah.
But it was originally written. It was originally written just as it was based on an episode of Star Trek.
Yeah.
That Jerome Bixby, he wrote short stories. He wrote a few episodes of TV here and there, and things that he wrote were turned into episodes of TV.
Yeah.
Like he wrote one of my favorite Twilight Zone episodes. It's a Good Life, which is about the kid with the scary powers.
Oh yes,
who's has his family held hostage basically because they're all terrified
it's
of him.
been used so many times. It's been whether aped or homaged.
Yeah, satire. There's a good episode of The Simpsons, one of the Treehouse of Horror ones, where there's a section in that where Bart has the scary powers and everyone's scared of him. So it's good. It's part of the Twilight Zone movie as well. They remade it as a section in that. So he's a good writer. So he wrote this episode of Star Trek about a man. It was basically a similar premise of a man who had just been alive for thousands of years, and it was kind of the same idea where it's sort of people just talking to him and him chatting away to them about things that he had experienced in the past and stuff. So I think then he got the inspiration to be like, I'm just going to turn this into its own thing and do a thing about another guy who had this experience but in a modern context. So he wrote it like years before and then never finished it. And then as he was getting on in years and like very old, in fact, he was essentially dying.
Yeah.
At the time, he had his son. He dictated the rest of it to his son, who's a screenwriter. And his son just took it all down and wrote it and was like, you happy with this? Yes. And then after he had died, his son went and got it produced and turned into a film, which is what we have here now.
And it's quite interesting, like, to know that he was literally on his deathbed when writing the final parts of it, to know. Because
but a man who can't die, and like a lot of it, you see that reflected in the attitudes of the other characters. Maybe some of them are bitter towards him. Some of them don't believe him or don't know whether or not to believe him, and some people get angry at him. Especially there's one character who has just recently suffered a bereavement, and he gets very upset at him. Because he just feels affronted and offended at the idea of it, and is obviously very emotional. But I found this film, I saw this film years ago. A friend of ours recommended it to me, and I'd never heard of it. And he was like, oh, you should watch this. It was actually surprisingly good. And I was like, how did he hear about this? You know, because it's just it seemed to me at the time to be just really obscure, and I remember watching it and enjoying it and then being like, where did this even come from? And so I've looked into it now, years later, and I was like, okay, so apparently it got famous from illegal downloading. It was during the sort of the initial sort of big sort of surge in the sort of post Napster, when people were downloading a lot of music and stuff like that illegally. At the time, whenever people were just starting to share films and stuff like that in that context of illegally, like in BitTorrent things, this film got famous because it was shared. Somebody captured it and shared it on a BitTorrent site, and people were recommending it to each other there, and then it spiraled out, and then it got sort of famous because people were just downloading it and watching it in an afternoon and being like, wow, this is really good. I got this film off the internet for free because I'm a criminal, because I'm a pirate. But this film was actually really good. And then that actually led to it being really successful.
Yeah.
Like, because it was like, again, we were talking before about like people working on smaller budgets. Now, this film does look like something that was made on a smaller budget.
Yeah.
You can tell that it was made, it was $200,000, I think, total.
Yeah.
Which for a movie is nothing.
Yeah, even one that is just taking place really in a room, apart from a handful of scenes outside of that.
Yeah, there's very little goes on outside of this one room.
Yeah.
But even given that is nothing for them to make a film on. So it's kind of amazing they got it made at all, to be honest. And but they did.
I think the question of whether this movie works or not for you as well is just like the content and kind of what it's about, because I mean, we said from the very start there that it doesn't look great. The sound's not the best. You know, production wise, it's not a good movie. But the kind of what they're talking about is, and like each one of them is an expert in their field that he just so happens to be friends with, and
well, I mean, I think they set up the context for that okay.
Yeah.
In that he's working at a university and these are university professors, and those are the kind of people you get on a university faculty.
And so it's not like they go through each one at the start and go, I'm an expert of that. Like how their expertise comes about kind of quite naturally, or like it'll be them kind of, you know, maybe saying, well, look, I know what I'm talking about with this because I've been studying anthropology for so long. You know, it comes about naturally in the conversation, which I like. But as well, like it's just kind of interesting. Almost, it's almost like a thought experiment. This movie. It's just like, what would you do if say one of your closest friends came to you saying, I am an immortal or something like that, you know?
Yeah, I've been alive for 14,000 years.
Yeah. And interesting wee things where like they explain why he doesn't have this like ridiculous wealth of knowledge, and it's the brain can only handle so much, and things like that. Like I enjoy the wee explanations for why he doesn't remember exactly, and the rationale of it all. You know, like can you remember where you lived when you were 3? Can you remember your house at that age? You know, no, you can't. And how should he remember something from 14,000 years ago? Yeah,
whenever there were no maps and places didn't have names and all that, and there was nothing built there or anything, and they tackle all that really well. I think as far as like the script writing goes, I think that's all handled extremely well. Yeah, and it is just this like, you know, how, and like I think is it Tony Todd? I think is maybe my favorite thing in this film, because most famously known as playing the Candyman, and he's a man who gets cast in a lot of horror films as just so that you can sort of point at the screen, much in the same way that Robert Englund, who played Freddy Krueger, gets cast in things, so people can point at the screen and go, hey, look, it's the Candyman, or, you know, with Robert Englund, it's like, oh, hey, look, there's Freddy Krueger, you know, in this dumb indie horror movie, but here he is putting in a really decent performance. Really good, actually. Really decent sounds disparaging. He puts in a really good performance. I think he was my favorite character because everyone's questioning him and people are getting annoyed and angry at the Immortal Man, and he's the only one who's like, I'm just gonna go along with this because it's a fun, as you said, like a thought experiment. He's treating it like that, and he's like, I don't know whether to believe this guy or not, but I'm going to act like it is. It's kind of like the way I was thinking of it. It's kind of like, for anyone who has ever like been a dungeon master or whatever, or GM like a D&D game, and you get a player there who's never played before, but is 100% willing to just lean into the fiction and being the character and playing things up and having fun with it. He's that guy. That's what I really like about him, is that he's always like, he's shutting everyone. Whenever other people are getting highly emotional, he's the one there to shut them down. And be like, no, there's no reason to get annoyed about this. Let's just go with it and see where it goes. This is fun. This is fun.
Yeah,
we're here to say goodbye to our
well.
friend.
Because especially a lot of the times, I mean, it's done in such a way to like expedite the story and like make things go at a certain pace. But there's a bit like a level of melodrama to this because people really overreact at times. I mean, the one that
throw the head up and storm out of the room at certain points, and you're like, "This is like a soap opera."
Yeah, you know, it's a bit over the top, but I can understand they're trying to make more of an impact in the movie than maybe would happen in reality. I mean, the one that I think it makes the most sense to me, just from people that I know, is the religious lady, like, getting very upset when he says that he was basically Jesus. And, you know, she gets very annoyed with him and stuff like this, almost like questioning their friendship and stuff of like, why would you do this and all this crap. And that's what spurs him to at that point kind of go, no, I'm only messing you.
Yeah,
but
is he doesn't want to hurt people's feelings.
Yeah.
You realize, because like the whole context of it is that he says to them that he hasn't really ever sat people down and told them this before, and they do bring that up, like, well, why are you doing it now? And he's like, I don't know, I just felt like I should.
Yeah.
You know, I just wanted to see what would happen if I told people that I've been alive for 14,000 years.
Yeah, and it also brings up that like, you know, it only ever slightly like touches on these elements. It doesn't go into a lot of depth in them because, again, that's what I think this is for. It's just to kind of spark these thoughts of like, if you were in his shoes, you know, or if anyone was in his shoes, he has, you know, these ideas. There's the lady who's very attracted to him and wants to start a relationship with him, and he doesn't really feel love anymore, in a sense that, you know, yes, he still feels lust and all, but he can't think of things in terms of like life partner and things like that, you know.
She asks him about it and he says, I've gotten over it too many times.
Yeah, you know, and it's just interesting wee concepts of that, of like, if you're outliving everyone you know, then of course you're not going to have this notion of love. You're not going to have like a strong religious bend to you because you've seen them come and go, and you're kind of just sitting there waiting for the next one to go. But no, it's interesting, these wee sparks, just wee flashes in the pan that could go overlooked or might just not grab you, but, you know, they're in it, they're just these wee ideas that you can just explore once the film's over. You can sit and think about a bit more, or discuss with whoever.
Yeah, and it does really well with like answering the they say it in the film, like, oh well, he's got an answer for everything, you know, which is easy for someone to do if they're sitting down and writing a script and they're doing it bit by bit and like construct this character who does have all these answers and all these memories. And that's, I really like the way he answers stuff, makes loads of sense, because it's like he's still just human. He's still a regular guy, you know. He's not some superhuman, and he's not massive. He even says, you know, he's not like massively intelligent or whatever. And he's like, I've had all these degrees. He's got a box full of degrees that he's got over hundreds of years. And he's like, that stuff doesn't even matter anymore because, first of all, I don't remember most of it. And also, well, I got like he says to someone, you know, I have your degree, but I got it in like 1890.
Yeah, so it's superfluous.
And therefore, most of the stuff is wrong. Yeah, it's like a biology degree or something that he has. And he's like, not... He's got a biology degree. And he's like, yeah, but it doesn't matter anymore because there's so much more I would have had to have kept up. And he says it's even impossible for people now who are still studying it to keep up with everything that's going on in the field, you know. So it's like it's something you'd never you would never have thought about before, about like someone
even just that
forever.
idea of like, you know, we our perspectives are so small and so limited to your body that they're asking him about like these big events, and he's like, yeah, I existed during that time, but all I have to go on is my perspective at the time. I didn't know you know, and it's just that kind of like stuff that, you know, that we all know, but when it's explained like that, it can make you feel very small.
It's like learning about something that happened in, say, Haiti in the 90s. Now, like, you were alive then, but you don't know anything about that. You weren't there watching it. You weren't present. You know, and it's like he can only say the stuff that he's gone through in his life. And yeah, it's really good. And I think some of the performances are not great. And sometimes they're okay. There's one character in particular who's a guy. He's played by a guy who was in Star Trek a lot.
Is this the biologist guy?
The guy, I can't remember
Harry,
what his
I think?
field is. Harry, yeah, John Billingsley. Sometimes he's obnoxious.
He's terrible.
But, I mean, like, he's like there, he's trying to be funny, and it's not funny, you know, his jokes don't land. And but there's a point in the film when the more drunk and cynical he gets as the film goes on, the more I sort of liked him, because he started to just get grumpy.
Yeah.
And actually, the point where he starts taking him seriously, I actually kind of liked him. But I didn't like him at the beginning. He was obnoxious and annoying. So people like Remy, I never really glommed onto the Art, who's like the guy that looks like a roadie.
Yeah,
for
that
Van
was
Halen,
always weird.
that guy.
Why he was like bringing his student along was very strange as well.
No, he was having a relationship with his student, and that was just. Yeah, and like, yeah, it doesn't even look like a roadie for Van Halen. He looked like Sammy Hagar, actually. He was dressed the same and everything. It's like, all right, whatever, mate. But I liked Richard Rale, who's in it, who plays the psychologist.
Yes, yeah.
I really liked him. I liked his performance, because he was like, he's always fun to watch. I've seen him he's usually in comedies, generally. And he can be very, very funny, but he's very serious in this. But I liked him a lot. And there's sort of a twist that they put in with him towards the end that I don't know if I kind of worked, but maybe didn't.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. It felt a little crowbarred in.
Yeah, it's kind of. I mean, don't know if this was the bit written on his deathbed. It's understandable.
I guess that makes sense. Yeah,
but they needed something to end it. They needed a twist or something like that to kind of show that he this is a big deal. What he's doing here, and maybe that's why. Maybe in some level he wanted his son to find out. Although I suppose his son wasn't there in the initial spark of the conversation.
Yeah, it's all like they needed. I guess they need a climax at the end of a story.
Yeah.
And so it does work for that, but it just felt a wee bit to me. It felt a wee bit forced, but it
especially
overall,
when she says when the kind of love interest is beside the immortal man, she says, "Oh, you've never actually witnessed one of your children dying or something like that." And it's like, okay, that seems a wee bit out of nowhere.
Yeah, the fact that she had to spell it out is a bit much. But it didn't wreck the film for me. On the whole, I think this is a good film. I don't think it's technically amazing or anything like that. It's, as we said, it's very like TV movie.
It's more of a play, and especially when you look, there's these one-room dramas have been done a lot better years and like in the 50s. You've got 12 Angry Men is possibly the best example of that. It's absolutely amazing. Or
Exterminating Angel or something. Even from an old film.
But I mean, you're comparing Sidney Lumet, who made 12 Angry Men, or Lumet. I'm not sure which it is, but he was a master of he knew exactly what he was doing. He made The Network and he made Dog Day Afternoon as well. This is a guy who is very talented, and this it's kind of annoying that this movie doesn't have that same level of care with the production side, because I think it does. Yeah. It does detract, and it'll put a lot of people off, maybe unfairly, but it is very bad production wise, as you said. It looks like a made for TV early 90s.
It does. I mean, I just can't get away from it. Just Dr. Quinn, Medicine Woman, was all throughout the whole thing. The color palette and the film grain and the way all the shots were constructed was so Dr. Quinn, Medicine Woman. I don't know. I just couldn't get away from it. Maybe I just saw too much Dr. Quinn, Medicine Woman when I was a kid. I would
actually probably prefer to see a good theater production of this than
Yeah, I think it could, and it was turned into a play after the fact. The point where whenever I first saw it, I assumed it was a pre-existing play. But it turned out that no, it was written for the screen initially, but it is very much a play. And I don't know if it was maybe obviously you save a lot of money if you're adapting a play because you only really have to build one set, which obviously they did for this. They only had to use one set, which is saves them a lot of money. But it's weird that it was even made in the first place. Like the fact that they managed to put something together on the budget that they had, and it was as good as it is. I think it's a script that is deserving of a better film, maybe, but it's still really good. Yeah. It's still captivating at times, and like at the beginning, it didn't really grab me, but once I got to like maybe the 30-minute mark, I was hooked, and you want to know because he starts as it delves deeper and deeper and deeper into his past. It becomes more and more fascinating, and you're like, well, how are they going to get around this? And then you see, and then you're like, oh, okay, that's actually really interesting. And the character interplay becomes good. And as people get more annoyed with him, the performances become better in a way.
Definitely.
That I enjoyed. And then, and the end's what it is, and that's okay, I guess. But I think this is, I would love to see this as a play. I think this could do really well in theaters. Okay, well, we eventually decided to go down and rescue one of these guys that fell off the bridge and is trapped under a car, but he seems actually quite happy down here. So, I guess we could swim back up to the surface in our scuba gear, of course, because we were on our way to go scuba diving. That's where our appointment was.
Yep.
So we had all our gear just in the back of the truck, as it were. But now we're just sort of here. So I'm so fed up with these people. I kind of sympathize a little with them, I suppose. Now, I'm not really sure whether or not I should.
I mean, if anything, these movies have maybe made us able to empathize with them a bit more.
Maybe, yeah, I don't know. So that being the case, John, then, which of these do you think was the best movie?
Ooh. Well, I mean, it has to be The Holy Mountain for me.
Yeah.
It was going to be between that and Highlander for very, very different reasons.
Yeah.
But I mean, The Holy Mountain is an actual great movie.
Yeah.
It's, I mean, for the cinematography alone, it's just beautiful. It's just amazing, and it's very rewatchable. And saying that, I have seen Highlander the most out of all these movies, and Highlander is definitely very rewatchable for very different reasons. Yeah. It's I kind of have to be in the mood for Highlander in a way. Like I have to want a kind of cheesy action, silly kind of romp, like but I love the two of them. But I think for me, the Holy Mountain just. It's a masterpiece, like it is. It just it's so unique. It's like,
it is.
How can you not pick it?
It is. Now, I'm kind of in a similar conundrum to you, where I was like, I have a love for Highlander in a way that defies reason almost at times.
See that? Like that's why I'm. Sorry to interrupt, but that's why I. The critic part of my mind is at odds with my nostalgia part of my mind, because I'm pretty sure nostalgia is playing a big part in my love of Highlander, but they're at odds. Where at least with the Holy Mountain, my mind can be at peace.
Indeed, I feel like I have a weird nostalgia for the Holy Mountain now as well, just through a drunken haze over the years of having seen it, like I think twice before now.
Yeah.
But not really absorbing it properly, and this time really watching it. And it is beautiful.
Yeah.
The Highlander does not share that aspect with the Holy Mountain, but the Highlander there's something about the charm of Highlander that I just find incredibly endearing.
Yeah.
And it is silly, and it does know that it's silly when it's being really silly, and it leans into that sometimes. Like the action scenes are daft. They don't work very well, but they're just in service of the greater plot, and that's okay. Clancy Brown is brilliant, and I always like to see him. His performance is great.
Yeah.
He's just he's like a big teenager almost in it. where he's like a big like sort of like, oh, I'm an edgelord and I'm gonna do
something to
things.
say. It's better to burn out than to fade away.
Yeah,
He's such a
exactly.
nerd.
He's a twat, like, but that's what's great about him. The Holy Mountain is, of course, excellently performed by everyone.
Yeah.
And it's beautiful, and there are so many layers to it. And it's just,
I think it's very important as well. Again, sorry for interrupting, but that it's also funny. You know, it's intentional. Like, again, I can't stress this enough that I get turned off so much by these super serious kind of arty movies, and again, inverted commas. Whereas the Holy Mountain, it's kind of in on the joke as well, and it's like going, I know this is ridiculous, you know, kind of the absurdity of life, and I kind of enjoy the fact that, you know, there is so much humor in this, and like the bits that you're laughing at with a less accomplished director would have probably have been like, oh no, you should be taking this dead serious, whereas in this you're like, no, this guy's having fun.
Yeah, I think it's very telling that we kept bringing up Monty Python while we were talking about it, because there is a lot of weird crossover there on a technical level.
Oh yeah,
and from sometimes like the actual scripting as well at times, which is great. And there's very little in the way of dialogue for most of the film as well. It's especially at the beginning, the sort of the first third of this movie. There's not much beyond grunts. And sometimes people talking actual nonsense. Yeah. You know, there's people like moving their mouths and making sounds, but it's not really language, and it's baffling and strange. And you're like, because I watched this movie, I hadn't seen this movie in a long time, and I couldn't remember whether or not it was even in English, and it is.
Yeah. I was the same. Yeah, I was like, shit, I need subtitles for this, don't I? And
yeah, I had the subtitles on, and then there wasn't any coming up, and I was like, do I even need to turn that on? I left them on though, because then it came on later, and I was like, okay, right, this is pretty much in English, and turned them off. Yeah. But yeah, it's so strange and just pretty. Man from Earth doesn't have any of those qualities really.
I think just what you said earlier when we were talking about the Man from Earth hits the nail on the head. Like, the Man from Earth is a script that I enjoy. It's not that movie. Like, when I look at it, it's very badly done in so many ways. Tony Todd, I think, is possibly, I think he's the best performance in it. And that's about it, really. That's all I can really take from it, as far as like on the production side of things. You know, there's no cinematography, so to speak. You know, there's nothing special there. There's nothing like great with the editing. You know, all those aspects are very functional, very, as we said, teleplay. So I don't even think it gets a look in on this, to be fair. No, yeah. I mean, it's a film that, you know, people bum and blow sometimes about like when somebody remakes a film. Yeah. And I think sometimes there is a good reason to remake a film, where a film maybe has a good script or a great idea at its core, and a good sort of maybe set of plot beats that aren't executed on well, or are diminished due to budget, time constraints, stuff like that. Yeah. And maybe then, like, and I'm going to bring it up again, but technically, like, John Carpenter's The Thing is a remake of The Thing from Another World. John Carpenter. Yes. Based on John W. Campbell's Who Goes There. And the original film is kind of an enjoyable thing, but no pun intended, it didn't mean to do that. But it changed a lot because of the time it was made. It was made before they could really do the special effects that would be required to tell the original story. Because in the original, so they just made him like Plant Man. They did. They made a man who had more in common with Frankenstein's monster, yes, than with the actual creatures in the short story. Yeah. Which is why it's a good thing that John Carpenter was able to come along in the 80s with a budget and be like, I can now make this adaptation of this story in a way that it follows way more closely the source material. Yeah.
and is a better film. I mean, I kind of like The Thing from Another World, but
for very different reasons.
Yeah, it looks nice and all. You know, it is actually a technically well-made movie, but it's not that frightening. And
well done. I didn't think we would get our John Carpenter reference in this episode.
Yeah, but I'm just saying that, like, sometimes a remake, and this, what I'm basically trying to say is that I think this film could benefit from another version of it.
Yeah.
I think someone else could come along and make a version of The Man from Earth and have it be maybe higher production values and maybe like just make a technically better film with pretty much the same script.
Yeah.
You could just transplant it over. Either that, or I would just do, I mean, we were saying before, I think I'd really like to see this put on as a stage play.
Yeah.
I think I would really like to see that. So I think this movie should get its props because it's well written and it's a fascinating idea.
Yeah.
But the execution maybe is lacking, but I still enjoyed it. But yeah, I'm going to have to also go with The Holy Mountain because it's gorgeous. And yeah, it's so striking. Everything about it is so striking.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful, beautiful film. And it is, when it's funny, it is quite funny.
Yeah.
And it's witty. And it's sometimes it's funny by being just absurd.
Yeah.
You know, and I love absurdist humor whenever it's done well. And it's not
that woman in the really high toilet.
Yes, that like they must have had to build that.
Yeah,
that's not a thing that exists, right? Because I was looking at it thinking, oh my god, that whole scene, the framing of that shot is wonderful.
Yeah.
And it's real. It makes it even funnier because it's been framed that way. You're like, that's so ridiculous.
Yeah.
And then I was thinking to myself, is this a type of toilet that exists somewhere?
I don't
And I had to
think
catch
so.
myself and be like, no way. And if it is, then
I can't imagine.
Grand.
Toilets are a very functional thing. I don't think that's
that seems
functional
very
at all.
impractical. Yeah, having
Like,
to,
how did she even get up there?
yeah, you need a ladder, like you know. So that's ludicrous, and that's like a visual gag that you don't realize is a visual gag for a few seconds, and then it hits you, and you start laughing. You're like, "This is wild." So yeah,
and
it's so
when
well
it's satirical, it's really strong as well. Like, you know, I mean, you mentioned earlier about the birds coming out in the place of blood, and things like that. And
there's
like
a point where someone is shot and there's blue smoke is pouring out of them.
Yeah.
Which that just really, like, that image has stuck with me since I saw it.
And then
it really did.
And like there's each of those planets that they go to, where it's introducing this character, and they're usually involved with something corporate or something. You know, there's one who's like the financial advisor for the president and things like that. And, you know,
that whole scene is so funny when he's like, he has all this weird stuff that he's doing, and then it's revealed that that's his job, and you're like, what?
Yeah.
That's so bizarre.
And then there's one who's like making sure that they're marketing the right toys to children so that they know who the enemy is. You know, they
to prepare an army for war.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, it's like I forget who it is in the movie that they're targeting, but it's like very strange, odd.
It's Peruvians.
Yes, you know.
For some reason, they're just like, because they do it. I mean, they don't say anything bad about Peruvians. They're just like, right, for example, if we were planning to go to war with Peru in 15 years, here's what we need to do now to prepare our people to hate the Peruvians.
Yeah.
And so they're making like, here's a little toy we made of a little vampire that looks like a Peruvian guy.
It's so funny and so ridiculous, but it such a strong message in it as well, and each one has that. I love this movie. It's great.
Yeah, it's brilliant and it's beautiful, and I will probably have watched it again maybe before the year is out. I think I might throw it on again. I've also, I think I've doomed myself now to just go on a Jodorowsky sort of marathon, because I'm currently trying to seek out a copy of El Topo so that I can watch that again now, because I haven't seen it in years, and I don't own a copy of it, so I'm gonna have to go and try and source one. But yeah, I think I'm in the midst of falling down a rabbit hole, and
right there with you.
Yeah, I can't not pick this film because it's done that to me.
Yeah.
It's inspired me to go and rewatch everything else.
So you're saying you're not going to watch Highlander 2 and 3 then?
I almost might, actually. I kind of want to rewatch Highlander 2 to see if it's as bad as I remember it being. So yes, I guess Highlander has done a similar thing, but for completely different reasons. because I don't think I'm going to enjoy in the same way watching Highlander 2 and 3,
Definitely not.
but I feel like I'm going to thoroughly be invested in El Topo, probably,
Yeah.
at least. Because I have seen that before. It's been a long time, but I remember enjoying the look of it and how just in the same way that this film looks so striking, I have images in my head that I remember about El Topo that I look forward to seeing again and maybe appreciating in a greater context. Because again, it's another film that I've never seen sober. I don't think I've ever seen El Topo sober, and I think I've seen it twice now again. Same way I've seen The Holy Mountain twice, drunk. So I want to watch it compos mentis, as it were, and see that. So yes, I'm definitely picking The Holy Mountain. Highlander is not a distant second.
No, weirdly,
but weirdly, but for extremely different reasons. That I'm picking that. And then of course, I think again, Man from Earth could be way better than it is, but there's still something in it, I think, to recommend it. I think it's still worth watching.
Yeah.
I think it's still... I think all three of these films actually average out, each of them, to be really good films, but for very, very different reasons. And they're all worth watching in their own way.
And all quite divisive as well. Indeed,
yeah. They're polarizing, I think. Every single one of them. You could have someone really love it or despise it.
Yeah.
And you could justify it, probably. They could probably justify their reasons why they don't like it. And I would understand.
Yeah.
But I just don't feel that way. And I was, again, you were saying before that you were, I think, off mic, as it were, that you're surprised that both of us are in agreement on all three of these films. Because there's other films that we've disagreed with on the past, and the fact that these films could be potentially so polarizing, it's weird that we both fell on the like side for all three of them.
Very strongly as well.
Yeah.
But there you go. That's how these things roll out sometimes.
There you go. So they're all good films, but if you're gonna pick one, I guess watch The Holy Mountain.
Yeah.
Because it's a feast for the eyes and possibly also for the soul.
Yeah.
But anyway, outside of that, John, how do we deal with the current situation of all these immortals and the problems that they're causing us? You know, because Highlander, I mean, the solution in Highlander is to
chop their heads
off, which is a bit much.
A bit extreme.
You know, nobody's like doing anything particularly egregious, but it is annoying, but it's not like, you know, I mean, they're annoying, but I'm not going to start executing people.
No.
That seems wild.
And plus, the law still exists, so we'll just get arrested. We'll get about 2 or 3 of them, and then that's it. We'll probably get arrested.
Yeah, it's still murder.
And neither of us are particularly strong swordsmen. I'm imagining.
I admire your confidence that we'll be able to get 2 or 3 of them. That is baffling to me, but sure. All right.
I think I can lob off about 3 heads before I get arrested.
Before you get arrested, on average. Okay, cool.
Challenge accepted.
Fair enough. All right. Probably not that.
The man from Earth gets disqualified because they don't get rid of him at all.
They do in a way.
Oh,
they get rid of him in that he just moves on.
I suppose.
You know.
Yeah.
He does move on and he does go, and he's no longer their problem. Not that he was ever their problem, really,
No.
except on a theological level for some of them.
Yeah.
They didn't appreciate that, but he does move on. You know, that's his thing that he does. So I guess you might be able to encourage people to just go away.
I mean,
that would be a good one.
I think we're overlooking the best solution, and it's very similar to an episode we did before, where in One Cut of the Dead, when we choose that for our zombies from around the world episode, Holy Mountain as the end, where basically you break the fourth wall and
you want to try it?
Yeah. Look, this is editor. This is a podcast. Stop the Foley noises.
Okay, hold on. Cut. Oh. Here we are once again. We're not even underwater, John. Nope. It was just an effect.
We are literally talking to each other on Skype.
Oh my gosh, John! The fourth wall fell and smashed, and I don't know if I can put it back together again. John, what have you done? Does that mean there's no such thing as an immortal?
No,
not anymore.
At least not to our knowledge, anyway.
Okay, great. Well, thank you, The Holy Mountain. Thank you
for bringing us back to reality.
Yeah, we've just, you know what? It's all just films.
Yeah.
And that's okay, which is the reason why it's okay to like Highlander and maybe even Highlander 2. You might be able... Yeah, if someone came to me and said they loved Highlander 2. Yeah, I'd be like, it's just a film, and that's fine.
Yeah, don't get
Thank
don't
you,
get annoyed
Jodorowsky.
about it and like start sending
Yeah.
death threats.
Yeah, which I feel is maybe some of the point of the Holy Mountain, is that, like, it's just a film, and here we are. You know, don't worry about it.
Yeah.
It's okay. It's just a film. So yeah, that's I feel pretty chill now. Thank you very much, John, for opening my eyes.
Well,
Thank you,
thank Jodorowsky.
Alejandro Jodorowsky.
Yeah.
Yes, I assume the W is pronounced a V because it seems like a Russian name, but you know,
Yeah.
he's
Is the
Chilean,
J
right?
is the J pronounced a H though? That's the.
I think it's Alejandro because he's from Chile.
I mean,
would think.
and Jodorowsky. I'm terrible.
Jodorowsky.
Jodorowsky. I don't know.
I'm
terrible. I'm terrible
This
at
is
pronouncing
a crazy discussion. This is a mad discussion about linguistics that I am not equipped for. I don't think.
I think we were better without the fourth wall broke now.
Indeed. Let's put it back up. Oh no, we're underwater, and there's stuff everywhere. All these immortals. No, how are we going to beat them? Let's cut their heads off. Oh God, I wasn't built. I can't even swim. This is great, and I'm scubaing around here. This is brilliant. So, John, now we're trapped underwater, but that's fine.
Yeah.
Now we're back under the water, rescuing this immortal from under his car, but he seems fine. What a jerk. So, that being the case, we are on Twitter. We are at 7 Day Apocalypse. That is at numeral 7 Day Apocalypse. If you want to contact us by email, you can do so on filmcast at thisweeksapocalypse.com. That is filmcast at thisweeksapocalypse.com. Thank you to our logo designer, One Wee Day at a Time on Instagram. If you want to follow them and like all their stuff or love it, I think it is on Instagram. I think there's a love button on there. I don't know. Ooh, touch the love button. That sounds bad. Let's move on. So until next week, live forever. There can be only one.
Touch our love buttons.
Ah!